Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, oops, I'm gonna get rid of my big face there. Gallery. Well, as you know, I think I've been given questions in advance. So I was given 5, I think, in total. I've sort of grouped them into 3, and so I'll begin. Thank you for your questions, and we'll see how long it's going. As Nitya said, there's time at the remainder, near the end of my responses. There may be questions from the floor. The first question: what are the 5 niyamas or laws of nature? How do we reflect on them? So, first thing to note is the niyamas are a post-canonical development. So, a few centuries after the Buddha lived and taught, these are developed within the Buddhist monastic community. So, just to bear that in mind, it doesn't mean that they're not useful or untrue. It just means that they are later developments. And sometimes we find with such things in the Buddhist tradition, some of the, perhaps there are proliferations that occur that aren't particularly helpful in one's practice, but you can see. These divide our experience, the natural world, and our internal worlds into these categories. The first is Utu Niyama, which you could say is like the laws of physics. So inanimate matter, weather systems, heat and motion, plate tectonics, things like this. The next is Bija Niyama. The word Bija means seed. And Bija Niyama refers to plant life, seeded things, genetics, you could say. So our natural world in all of those things that are subject to weather, to heat and motion, and things like that, as well as to our own genetic and bodily functions. The next is, or the next in the list I'm giving anyway, would be Chitta Niyama. So these are the laws of the mind. So our mental experience of happiness, sadness, depression, anxiety, joy, these kinds of things would fall under Chitta Niyama. The fourth would be Kama Niyama, so the laws of moral causality, moral causation. So the fact that our experience is to some important extent determined or influenced, or we'll say conditioned by our moral choices, our decisions, our intentions, literally. So this would be Kama Niyama. And the final would be a Dhamma Niyama. So these would be, you might say, spiritual laws. Sometimes I think Dhamma Niyama is understood to override, you might say, or to encompass all of the 4 preceding laws. But for our purposes, thinking, we'll say, of the 3 characteristics of existence in line with Dhamma Niyama, or the real and vital possibility for Nibbana. This would factor in. Nibbana is interesting because its reality, you might say, extends beyond, outside of, is not contained within the laws of physics, chemistry, and genetics and so forth, but rather is beyond these. So these are the five niyamas as I understand them. I mean, these are not things that these are not categories I literally consider a great deal in my own life. So I'm just sort of speculate or just coming up with ideas here in a sense. But one of the things I think that is important about taking on the niyamas and just contemplating them for a moment is sometimes when people first encounter the notion of kamma, it becomes a kind of a very pervasive reality in life. So everything is determined by kamma, by our intentional actions of thought, speech, and deed. And yet we must realize that there are other factors that pertain to our experience. If there's an earthquake or something like this, we needn't take it personally, in other words. And we may of course suffer from the earthquake, but it may or may not have anything to do with kamma. It's just an event, and we're in its way. Similarly with weather or things of this kind, we can say that, you know, whether or not we've prepared our house for the hurricane coming up is, you know, there's decision, there are intentions there. We've neglected something intentionally or unintentionally, but so perhaps there's a karmic element. And we also know of we've probably all heard of catastrophes in which some individual is completely just walks away from some train wreck or something completely unscathed, where others have been killed and very badly damaged, injured. And we are likely to attribute that to karmic conditions, but just to attribute everything in life, everything in experience, everything we observe to karma is perhaps to make too sweeping a judgment on it. All of that said, you know, and it's actually been years since I read the Aganya Sutta, but there is a sense in early Buddhism that the moral quality of a people, of an age, of the world, the moral quality of the people will in fact have dramatic effects on things like weather and the viability of, we'll say, the soil, or just the health of the planet. And so we could then use karma here to paint, or rather with a very wide brush, you might say. So possibly there are periods of human history when the world has been more of a, you might say, a kind of paradise, where plants grow in a healthy way, and the soils are fertile, and there's a kind of abundance of healthy conditions which promote forces of life-giving forces. And in this scheme of thought, then we could see the operations of karma here, the general awareness, the state of consciousness, the care with which people were acting in their lives in the world. So so obviously there's a lot to take on board here. If you choose to use this schema to understand things, there's a lot of value in understanding the laws of nature, the natural laws. So those are the five niyamas. The next one is what is the Buddhist concept of time? I'll try to be brief, making a small joke there. I think I'm just aware without being able to call to memory particularly well. I think Nagarjuna spoke about time in his great Mulamadhyamaka Karika text. Dogen, the great Zen master, also, I think, wrote about time. I have not read Dogen on this. So obviously, the nature of time, the notion of time, is something which has come up from time to time in the Buddhist tradition. What is the Buddhist concept of time? I guess the brief answer would be there is no such thing as time. And when you come to the monastery, be sure to come to the morning and evening pujas, 5 or 10 minutes early. So, yeah, our reality, this kind of the reality that we live in is time determined, isn't it? Not just because we have watches and clocks and our iPhones and whatnot to keep track of things, and we have to obey our work schedules and our eating habits and so forth. Not just because of that, but causality itself, as we understand it, is time bound. We say, I have water in my cup here, and it got to be there because earlier I put some water into it, and now I've had 2 sips from it in the last 10 minutes. So everything is sort of owing to our sense of time, our experience of time. Causality in Buddhism, patitya samutpada, dependent origination, the condition co-arising, however you wish to define this term, translate the term. This leads to that. Without this, that doesn't arise. That kind of sense. So time is inherent in our notions of causality. Something leads to something else. This happened because that happened before. So we do live in a time-bound reality. And yet, sometimes we also have little glimmers that things can be otherwise. And I'll draw a little bit on things that maybe every one of us have heard from time to time. Near-death experiences. People will talk in these experiences of, after some catastrophic accident or something, their whole life flashes before them in a moment, basically. They aren't watching on their clock to see how long it's taken, but it effectively, experientially, is a moment. And the whole life flashes before them, they say. Or I've heard people speak about the possibility of telepathy, for instance, where instead of, notice that language, you're waiting for every word, because my language, my expression in English to you, you're waiting for the proper article or verb or adjective or what have you. They follow in a certain order. And at the end of the sentence, you've now gotten, the last thing that I wanted to convey to you. So we're waiting for it. I'm speaking to you in time, and you're waiting for these phonemes to arise through Zoom in time, and then you capture the meaning. In telepathy, I've heard it said, again, we have kind of momentary thing where a thought form is sent or somehow received, and a whole richness of meaning is absorbed in an instant. So we have interesting examples like this where time is something else. Time is experienced, if at all, in an entirely different way. When you think about insights too, insight, I think, has this kind of quality. If you've ever been sitting, maybe in meditation, maybe not in meditation, but suddenly some sort of meaning has just dropped in your heart, in your lap, wherever meaning drops. it's an instant, and it makes sense of a whole range of experience. It's that kind of aha moment. It doesn't seem to occupy any time, does it? You may answer yes or no to that, but I think it's worth asking the question at least. Or when someone says aha, and that moment of insight seems to shed light on a whole range of experience, and there's a kind of instance of it. So time is suddenly falls away and is irrelevant in moments like that. And more particularly in practice, when our meditation is smooth and we've gotten out of the way, when it's just present, there is simply the arising of the moment. There's the moment of the experience, and again, you can ask yourself whether this is correct for you. But it seems to me that in these moments, it doesn't feel like one moment and now the next moment and now then how many moments is that now? Oh, that's 38, and now there's another moment. No, it's just each moment is exactly what it is. It's fresh, alive, and it's fully present. So there's the emergence of experience, the knowing of what has arisen, what is arising in this moment. So, I mean, I don't know if there is a precise definition. What was the concept of time in Buddhism? But it seems to me that I am addressing practitioners. At least that's the way I'm taking this question. This is the context of the question that I'm contemplating it within. But it seems to me that within the life of our practice, within a human life in its various experiential forms, we do experience time in very, very different ways. Everybody knows what it's like for an afternoon to drag on and on and on. You don't have to be a child to be bored out of your mind and wondering when your mother's going to bring that treat that she promised, something of this kind. Or, it's 3 days to my birthday. When is tomorrow? When is my birthday? So we experience time as a real variable. It is not constant. Sometimes it's extremely slow. Sometimes, of course, it's very, very fast. Now, at my age, years seem to trot by at quite a clip. That wasn't the case when I was 7. That's for sure. But within meditation, I think I don't know whether it sheds altogether new light on the experience of time, but it does, I think, bring to light the aspect of time just dissolving and fading away in moments into a kind of irrelevance, where we're simply aware precisely of the moment. It's full, it's complete. There's a kind of gestalt to it. Here it is, here it is, here it is. So the third question is how's our speaking of time? Oh dear. Speaking of time. The third questions, and there are actually 3 of them here, but they all relate to practice. I'll read them. Please share some practical tips or techniques that could help us in effectively quieting our minds enough to enter a state of deep stillness. When we sit down to meditate and find ourselves overwhelmed by a constant replay of stressful events from the day, causing us to feel tense and anxious, do you have any tips or advice on how to navigate this challenge? So similar kinds of questions, but with important difference there. And finally, one asking me about my own practice, what specific meditation method do you personally prefer or find effective? For instance, mindfulness, mantra repetition, breath-focused meditation, or another approach. What is the experience like when you successfully quiet your mind enough to enter a state of deep stillness? Some refer to as the zone. How long does that state usually last on a good day? How much time does it typically require for you to enter the zone? I'll answer most of those questions at the end by just saying it depends. Okay, so these are all good questions, and they're ongoing questions. I mean, basically, they could be the questions that come up for almost any Dhamma talk, couldn't they? Because I think as practitioners, we're all vitally interested in this matter of how to meditate and how to make it more effective and so on. And I've got some questions. Where are they? I put them somewhere. Yeah. So I'll start with some questions to those questioners or to any of us, because my interest here is to take a step back. And I'm thinking maybe first of all about the question related to having a busy day, a stressful day, and you come back home and you think it'd be good to meditate, but wow, it's just hard to settle the mind. And what do I do here? Well, take a step back, and maybe a meditation, or you could get a contemplation during meditation, before meditation. It doesn't really matter how you conceive of it, temporally speaking, but there are some questions you can ask yourself. Well, what did I do today? What did I do today? Maybe you were extremely busy. Maybe your responsibilities were bringing you in all kinds of directions. Why would it be any surprise that it's difficult to find some peace and quiet in the mind? What did I do today? How did I spend my time? And maybe in particular, because it isn't just a matter of being busy, but it's how we're holding that and how we're behaving, how we are behaving ourselves in the midst of busyness. So always it's very important to reflect on how our sila is being maintained. That is, are we finding that we can continue to observe our precepts? I'm sort of assuming that everyone here, from time to time, maybe every day, I hope, but certainly from time to time, reflects on the 5 precepts. Ajahn Chah and probably all Buddhist teachers will say these are what keep us human. Perhaps you're aware of seeing and hearing about, reading about things that some people do, and they simply do not seem human. They are, they seem to put people into the realm of animal or demonic or maybe angelic, but we're capable as human beings of acting in extremely unwholesome ways. That's not likely to be the case with anyone here. But I'm just saying, sila is where we begin, and this is how we continue our practice. So, were you agitated today or yesterday because of an argument you got into, or something you said about someone that was maybe a little bit unkind, hadn't been thought through as carefully as you could? Those kinds of actions will find themselves, sitting on your lap, or will be on your meditation seat before you get there. They follow you there. They follow you there at the very least. So our behavior and how it is we're able to maintain our sila is of extraordinary importance in how it is that meditation goes. So it's very important, rather than than finding yourself in the predicament of, oh no, what can I do to quiet my mind here? But remembering the value of your meditation and value of sila to put into your entire life. Everything I do will somehow be reflected in my meditation. Am I just anxious today? Is there something I can do to just take a pause here and settle for a while and quell this anxiety? Just watch my breath, before I continue eating, or as I wait for the bus, or as I sit at a red light. Am I always worried about being on time? Was I late for work yesterday, and I might be late for work again today? And what can I do to alleviate that? Maybe it is getting up 30 minutes early, but when there is that anxiety, just bringing your attention to your breath for a while, breathing in a few times. There's nothing you can do at the moment while you're waiting at the red light. It's just going to remain red for as long as it needs to, as long as the traffic people have timed it for, and then I can continue. There's nothing I can do right now about that. And how carefully can I observe the fact of being anxious? Because anxiety is, as Lumpur Sumedho will say all the time, anxiety is like this. Frustration is like this. Resentment, irritation are like this. And when we can bring something of our practice into our daily life in this way, just these, they may begin with as a kind of verbal reminder. Oh, anxiety is like this. But what happens to that anxiety, that previous moment of anxiety, when we just observe it, like we would a naughty child? Oh, there you are. Well, come and sit down. You're observing it. You're acknowledging this. Just a second. I see something on the chat. Is this for me? Okay. I'm taking my co-host duties too seriously, I guess. I was hoping there wasn't a note to me, speak up or something like that. So how have I spent my day? That's just a question we can ask ourselves. And how am I honoring my sila? What are those 5 aspects of sila? What are they again? Just repeat them and just reflect on them a little, just sit with them for a little while. So that would be just a question you can ask yourself. What do you mean by meditation? So what it is you do on your little, or your big sitting, or your favorite chair, or wherever it is, whatever you do, that's meditation. But does what you do when you're waiting for the bus or talking on the phone, we don't normally understand. We don't normally call this meditation, but does it have anything to say? Do they have anything to say to one another? These two activities. Acquisition of sila, of our behavior, of the karma we are making in our life, but it will have an impact certainly on the meditation. But maybe in broader terms, okay, meditation is sitting, and it's not just sitting; it's sitting on my meditation cushion, where I've got a Buddha rupa or a vase of flowers, or where I have incense going. That's meditation. But when I'm sitting somewhere else, that is meditation. Is standing meditation for you? So this maybe brings to the point. Do you experiment in your meditation? Do you ever stand in meditation? It's one of the 4 postures the Buddha recommended. It can be done. Meditation can be done in any of the 4 postures. So standing is one of them. Actually takes up less space in a sense than sitting does, less floor space anyway. unless your feet are particularly large. So, have you experimented? If, for instance, you're finding a lot of just difficulty, the body is, anxious or whatnot, change postures. Change postures. Try to stand. Maybe even your apartment or your home offer a bit of opportunity for walking meditation. Sometimes we expect too much of ourselves. We've had a very busy day, an anxious day, and got all of this kind of nervous energy. Then we sit down and we're surprised that the mind won't settle. Well, making the body a little bit busier, but in a composed sense through walking could be a very good thing to do in that case. And walking, not just 5 minutes here, but 30 minutes, an hour, or longer. And don't expect anything of it. The calming that can occur in walking meditation may take a while, but you're expending some energy doing this, and it's just repetition, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But eventually there is energy which is expended, and just the reality of walking, the fact of the steps, the pressure on the balls of the feet, the soles of the feet, the feeling of movement, the legs moving, how the back adjusts, how you keep your balance. All of these things just begin to, in a gentle way, begin to impress upon the mind, and mindfulness develops around this. So if sitting is particularly difficult, try walking, try standing. Lying meditation also, and I know many or maybe all of you have sat and listened to Luang Por Viradamo speak very knowledgeably about lying meditation. How it is that you can avoid sleepiness, for instance. It's not a good thing to do when you're sleepy, certainly, but it's one of the 4 postures, and it can be used in meditation very effectively. So it's one to be considered, certainly. But so this is just another question: what is meditation to you? And maybe your definition of meditation is too narrow. I'd certainly recommend standing and or walking at times. I don't think many people think of standing, for example. Even in meditation retreats, it's not maybe so often employed. I sometimes make reference to the 4 elements in relation to the 4 postures, because it's and you might reflect in your own experience to see how this resonates or how you feel it's true. But sitting meditation is defined in terms of the earth element, so solidity, stability, bearing, weight bearing. Standing meditation for fire, the fire element. So there's energy here. Here again, if you're a little bit sleepy, or if the body is just feeling kind of sluggish, standing will change that. Then you may find that something of the fire element becomes apparent to you. The body feels different, and therefore what mindfulness is attending to is going to, the arena of mindfulness the context for mindfulness will differ. Walking meditation would relate to the air, the air element. So movement, wind, the wind element. And finally, lying meditation for the water element. Another one for you. How often do you meditate? How often do you meditate? It's we take for granted that a group like this lovely group here on this Zoom call are meditators. They're interested in Buddhist practice and teachings. But how consistent are you? Do you find, even when you don't feel like meditation, that you still, because you always meditate twice a day, do you find that you still darn well get down and sit meditation, or do you avoid it? I don't feel like it today. Didn't feel like it yesterday either, but sometimes I really feel like it, and I love meditation when I feel like it. And how often is that? Oh, once, twice a week for sure. Or, well, I haven't meditated for a couple of weeks yet, but anyway, it's I'll get around to it, I'm sure. Our attitude towards meditation could be very casual. It will the benefits of meditation will accrue to those who give it their time and energy and honor it, you might say, with regularity. And being regular with meditation is very important. It's very, very important. Uh, I often think of the example of brushing your teeth. If you haven't brushed your teeth in the morning, and if for some reason you've forgotten it, if that's even possible to forget brushing one's teeth, it just the day doesn't seem right. You're getting into your car in the morning maybe, and oh gee, I didn't brush my teeth, and you pop back in the house to do it. But meditation can be the same sort of thing. It feels different not to have meditated in the morning. The mind, it brings a kind of lightness and composure to the mind, which you will find lacking if you haven't done it. How often do you meditate? We often recommend twice a day, morning, evening. Mornings, most people can get up half an hour early, 40 minutes early. I know some lay people who are extremely disciplined about their meditation practice. Even people going to work, getting up at 4:30 in the morning. I mean, it's a very laudable. It's very, very. It's worthy of respect for people, to see people in our community who give it that kind of attention and understand that it's of great value. So why this is important is that when you go to sit, and these questions, I'm assuming they sort of come to us in the afternoon when you, at the end of a busy day, you're meditating again. If you've been meditating regularly and once a day, every day, or twice a day, every day, there will be certain habits. The mind will be used to, oh, it's time to meditate now. And that simple instruction is absorbed in the mind, and meditation becomes somewhat easier. Of course, what's going on during the day is going to be relevant, but it will not be a kind of overriding distraction or impediment if the day has if one's days are almost always or always punctuated by regular meditation. Another question would be, of course, how long do you meditate? And if you can sit for 20 minutes, that's way better than not at all. But extending the period of meditation is very valuable, because there are things that begin to settle in an hour, we'll say, that are unlikely to settle in 20 minutes. And even if they settle in 20 minutes, to sit with them, and then to sit with the ongoing variability and the ongoing subtlety of practice for another 40 minutes will certainly teach us something about meditation proper. The last question I wrote for you is, what do you expect from your meditation? You go to a retreat, and the whole world seems to open up. In meditation, you experience just changes everything. It's wonderful. I'm so grateful I did it. You go back home, and meditation continues for a while, and it slips off, within a few weeks maybe of the retreat, and so forth. And yet maybe you still bring that expectation. Well, it's not working for me anymore. What's happening? Maybe you're just not putting in as much effort as you could. Maybe meditating twice a day instead of once a day, or once every other day, or when you get around to it. meditating a little bit longer, continuing to meditate for, that 45 minutes or an hour instead of breaking it at 20 minutes. So what do you expect of it? But more broadly speaking, when you sit to meditate, is there a kind of informal, unspoken expectation? Oh, now I'm going to get calm. It's been a rough day, but this will settle me down. Is that the expectation? What are the demands you're placing on your practice? Rather than just making it your practice and letting it be what it is for this day. Because it has its own agency. I'm speaking of it as an external object, you might say, but there's some value to this from time to time, and seeing that there are, that meditation itself will have its own agency. And the body may be different. There may be, considering the niyamas we just looked at, there may be aspects of the weather, subtleties of this kind, which actually do have their place in one's experience. And you only become aware of them when you start to meditate. And gee, I never noticed this before. But yeah, why should every meditation be the same? Let alone why should it be building from one day to the next on that best meditation you had during a retreat? That's not going to happen. I think anyone who's done this for any length of time will really realize that it does not happen. So those are just some questions for you. And maybe I've touched upon some of the things that can be done to help to quieten the mind. One would be to let go of expectations. And I'll say something else too. Relaxation is very important. So, some of the things that we can do before and during any meditation is just, okay, this is my time now. Breathe a few times in deeply, and just relax the body. Extend some loving kindness, and this can be, it never gets tired to love oneself. You'll never get tired of it. But when we're in a state of feeling some benevolence towards our own experience, even to the extent, of course, some forgiveness. Yeah, it wasn't a good day. There are things that I, said that I probably I shouldn't have said during that one conversation, or, that thing that they said to me, it still kind of sits with me, but, I still love myself and I can let it go. But just a sense of, you may have some words, simple words that can just seed this. You might find that work every time. Peace, or letting go, let it go, release, peace, release, loving kindness. Just some little words that seed this sense of having some true benevolence for oneself. And just beginning any session like this, every session like this. It's very good to, I would say, to practice some loving kindness, chant in English or in Pali, if you prefer, chant the meditation, the reflections on loving kindness. This is a very, very ancient and powerful chant, and to do so with some loving reverence does instill the experience with something very beautiful. The body feels more at ease when it's in a state of benevolence, of loving kindness, of love. When the body is feeling at ease, it's much more easy to be mindful. It's more difficult to be mindful in a state of agitation because it's not pleasant. So cultivating loving kindness in this way is very, very skillful. It's very helpful, and you can see for yourself. You can find the results in your own practice. If you're doing it in English, I sometimes recommend rather, if you've memorized it for years now, you'll have a certain way of doing it, a certain pace of doing it, and you're just going through it, and that's all fine. Slow it down, say those words at 1/3 the rate you normally do. Contemplate them. This is a very powerful old chant. These are the Buddha's direct words. This is the way we understand it. Imagine that. Imagine that he was dictating the words. Sitting in the room with you, dictating the words to you in a very loving way. Imagine that. You can work in this kind of way. What I try to do when I'm offering reflections of this kind is to give different ideas, because our temperaments do make a difference. Some suggestions will work perfectly for some people, and others, I've tried that, doesn't seem to do, but something else might do. So you need to just see how these things work and how they resonate with you, and work with something which sounds useful. So the first foundation of mindfulness is the body, and that's in a way what I'm getting at here. And for most of us, most or all of the time, or all of us most of the time, or something, being aware that coming to sit in meditation, there is this body, and this is what we work with, which we contend with, which we try to soften, to offer some beautiful composure to, because it will have it has a great presence for very good reason in our practice, and it will be apparent to us when we're coming to sit and practice. All right, so the question, we're getting close to, okay, how often do I enter the zone? What is the zone? I'm not going to say too much about this. I'll say, I should say in a kind of in a formal sense, monks are quite often a little bit reluctant to talk about their own practice. There are certain things that we don't say to lay people, and I'll say if it were the case that a monk had actually experienced some of the supernormal states, one of the jhanas, or had attained one of the 4 stages of awakening, they are formally not permitted to speak to lay people. Not because it wouldn't be perhaps encouraging, but it can also be very it can lead to complications and hero worship and things like this, which are not beneficial at all. So anyway, if it were the case, I wouldn't be talking about these things. But of course, we're all interested in the zone. I'm not sure what that means. I guess we all know what it means, but probably it means something like what we're talking about in relation to time. Just when the moment is full and complete in and of itself. It's just beautiful. The moment itself is beautiful. There is this movement. There is the emergence of a thought, the acknowledgement of a sensation, of an emotion, of a thought, what have you. It rises, it exists for some short period, some moment, and passes away. And these moments arise and pass, and in and of themselves, they're beautiful. And it depends. These are experiences I think we all value and honor, and we can't expect them though, as I said earlier. And I've basically I've tried all of the things that I've mentioned. I've never really been except when I was a kid, I guess, practitioner of mantras, but I do enjoy walking meditation a lot. So that is one thing I always recommend. And standing, is something I've done from time to time for years as well. And it does have a different character to it. And it's certainly worth experimenting with and using skillfully and as often as you feel needed. It's not always the case amongst practiced monks, well-practiced monks. It's not always the case that sitting is not necessarily the form of meditation that all serious practitioners use. Sometimes monks will be known to be walkers more than sitters. And it could be that some are much more, or even well known for standing. I've not had that. I don't think I have an example of that in particular, but use these things anyway and experiment with them. And there are monks too. I think Lumpur Gunha, for instance, does a lot of lying meditation now. And of course, he's completely coherent and clear and mindful for hours and hours and hours at a time. But I believe, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but he has been known at least to spend a lot of time in lying meditation. So we have a few minutes. Maybe there's time for a question. I didn't look at the watch soon enough to speed up my delivery.
Andamayam Dhammakataya Sadhu Kadam Dadamasi Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
Thank you, Prajan, so much for teaching us today. And also thanks for accepting questions. So if anyone has a question for Prajan, please raise your virtual hand button and we will help you unmute yourself.
Well,
Shamina.
Okay, Shamina.
Morning, Ajahn Pavaro. It's Shamina here. I'm just wondering how you keep your body.
Shamina, sorry, could you speak up? I'm not able to hear you clearly.
Be my end here. Yes. I wonder how you keep your body fit for sitting meditation. So I know walking meditation keeps us kind of moving, but is there anything you're doing? Because I find sitting can shorten some muscles in your legs, and then you find it, you get neuropathy and other things happening. So just curious to know if you have anything outside of walking meditation that you're doing.
Me personally, you mean?
Yeah, or that you know that those who sit for longer do things to keep the body fit.
Well, I mean, some people do have a regular practice of yoga, right? Or walks can be much more sedentary. I mean, they can be pretty vigorous. But yeah, it's important. The body needs to be attended to and properly honored. So I guess I could recommend exercises, yoga, that kind of thing would be good ways to keep some fitness in the body. I expect many of you have regimens of one kind or another. So, and I'm not a kind of expert, certainly in physical fitness and that. I do some exercises in my kuti. Sometimes they fall away a bit. I'm pretty regular in a wood shop, but and I've always got the walking to and from my kuti to look at. But you're right, yeah. And that's one reason why even using walking meditation is a good thing, because it does have different characteristics to it. Mindfulness emerges at a different rate, and it has a different quality until it's the same. What I mean is you're observing different features of experience, obviously in walking than you are in sitting. But at a certain point, the moment, when the moment arises in and of itself, there's a kind of sameness to it. So but walking, and if you can begin by walking quickly. As I said earlier, if you arrive to meditation practice and there's a kind of agitation, the mind has been busy and so on, it can be good to walk. Maybe spend 10 minutes kind of walking quickly and then slow it right down. But because there is movement involved, there will be still energy expended, and you may find that stillness comes quite quickly, maybe even unexpectedly.